talks about a deadly sexually transmitted disease, syphilis, which was a taboo in that time. Now, remember the time when AIDS had created havoc across the globe, and people before the advent of AIDS were not talking about sex or sexuality with as much openness as they did later. The government sponsored projects and various NGOs started making people familiar with sexuality in order to make them survive the contamination or survive the onslaught of AIDS. Syphilis in the 19th century Europe was one such disease regarding which people did not want to talk. And Oswald Alvin inherited the disease from his father, even though he did not lead an intemperate life, even though he did not had his sexual relations with many women. Now that shows us the ghost, the concept of ghost existing in another living individual being as a disease. What is a ghost? Ghost is not the body, but something that survives the body. When Mr. Alvin dies, his repercussions, his personality also lives in form of a disease, venereal disease that his son contracts without leading the life that perhaps would have led him to get the disease. So you see, despite the best efforts of Mrs. Alving, she could not prevent her son from contracting the disease, and therein lies the idea of the personal ghost. Not only there, Mrs. Alving also sees that Oswald Alvin has a kind of soft corner for a maid in their house, Regina. Now, this was not something that was not seen in the European stage. Later, you would see that uh, Later, you would see that in many of the plays by George Bernard Shaw, the maid actually takes charge of her life, like the play Pygmalion, in which Eliza Doolittle, which was not actually a maid but a disciple who took charge of her life, like the play Arms and the Man, in which the maid actually takes charge of her life. So a maid having a relationship with a master is not something that was unheard of in European literature or European stage. But in this play, when Oswald Alving expresses his love for Regina, the mother is at a dilemma. She is at a dilemma because she knows that Regina is in fact the daughter of Mr. Alving himself. Regina is the daughter of the maid with whom Mr. Alving had an illicit relationship, and that consummated and that led to the birth of Regina. Mrs. Alving did not tell this to Oswald because she thought that telling the truth about his father might cause a negative impact on her son. But despite her best efforts, the ghost of Mr. Alving survived in the personality of Oswald, as he also expressed his love for a maid, as his father had expressed his love for a maid who lived during that time. And at this time, Mrs. Alving is at a dilemma. What to do? Can she allow his son to fall in love with a maid which she knows is actually his stepsister? Incest, or the relationship between family members, which is frowned upon, which is not accepted by ethics, which is not accepted by the moral codes of conduct, is a motive that is there in various European plays. You may draw this instance from the famous play by Sophocles, Oedipus the Rex or Oedipus the King, in which Oedipus unwittingly, unbeknownst to himself, without his own knowledge, without his own volition, ends up getting married to his own mother. In the plays by Aeschylus, like Orestia trilogy, in that play also you see that Electra has a kind of loving relationship with her father Agamemnon, which defies the filial relationship between a father and a daughter. In the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare, you also see that the uncle Claudius gets married to the mother of Hamlet, which was also incestuous, something that Hamlet did not quite approve of. You see that incest of problems within the family is one of the tropes that are used in many European tragedies. That's why perhaps Ludwig Wittgenstein once said that a tragedy shows us a problem within a family. And incest is one of the many ways, rather one of the most vociferous ways, one of the most effective ways in which a family problem can be shown. Now, Mrs. Alving is fighting with the codes of conduct that do not allow incest, and that is why she has to finally tell her son that no, you cannot get married to Regina because she, in fact, is a stepsister. We realize here that despite her efforts to exorcise the ghost of her husband, despite her efforts to create a personality that did not quite adhere to the actual life lived by Mr. Alving, Mrs. Alving is finally forced to tell the truth that yes, your father was not as good a man as I had pretended him to be, as I had projected him to be. And therein we find the impact of the dead on the living. Now, in case the ghost of Mr. Alvin survived in the form of in the form of Oswald, in case his lecherous tendencies also survived in form of Oswald's desire for Regina, in case his the disease syphilis also survived by uh, by being given to his son Oswald, then perhaps his impact was only on his son. Now, is it fair that a son has to pay for the sins committed by the father? The Judeo Christian tradition tells us so. The very existence of humans on this planet Earth is possible by a sin committed by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, with the sin which is called the original sin. Before Adam and Eve, humans, because there were only two humans, Adam and Eve, there was no death, and humans did not experience death. The fact that Adam and Eve violated the rule and committed the original sin of falling in love with each other and eating the forbidden apple, and that is why death was invented. And in that way, all human beings are paying for the sins committed by Adam and Eve, and all human beings by being the progeny of Adam and Eve are also committing incestuous relationship because we all are brothers and sisters. Mrs. Alving deals with that problem which exists from the very genesis of universe according to the Judeo-Christian tradition. Along with incest, this play also deals with various other problems, and one more problem is the social ghost. In the beginning of the lecture, we discussed how the concept of a ghost can be divided into one individual ghost, the ghost of one person who lived one life and then had a tremendous impact upon the people who followed him. Similarly, the concept of ghost can also be looked at as a social construct, the legacy of tradition, moral values, which we ought to follow because they were written down by our ancestors, forms the idea of a social ghost. And how does that determine our life? What do the ghosts want from us? The ghosts want from us to also become ghosts. We have been given these lies or these imaginations that after we also leave our corporeal body, after we also leave our body, then we will go to a different realm, perhaps to heaven or to hell, or roam around on the planet Earth. We do not know what will happen after we die. Do we? We don't, right? Death is an unknown country from whose dawn no traveler ever returned, right? But despite that, we are fed with the fancy that maybe after death, we will pay for the sins that we committed, or we will be rewarded for the meritorious deeds that we accomplished during our life. So, giving this promise that there is an afterlife for which you should strive by living a virtuous and moral life, the ghosts of our ancestors make us abjure the pleasure of our life when we are living. In that way, the ghosts want us also to become ghosts. There is one thing that we can say with absolute certainty is that we all will die. Jatas sahi dhruva mrityu, martya mandale deha vahi, devata huile morai. We know that we will die. The fact that we are alive, we will die. All the people who are together, all of us, today or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, one day we will die, right? And that is what has happened to all the ancestors that we know. They have died. Now, we would also like to stay on this beautiful planet Earth, fight with the people, love the people, laugh with the people, enjoy the food, the music, the beautiful meadows, the beautiful walks that we have taken, the beautiful filial relationships that we have been engaged in, perhaps even afterlife. And in that way, we would also like to intervene in the way humans are living, so that after we die, we live in form of a ghost for our following generations. They would also recognize our presence even after our death. And we also, inheriting the legacy from the ghosts, being haunted by the ghosts, being guided by the ghosts, want to become ghosts. And that is an idea, that is the problem that Henrik Ibsen deals with predominantly in this play, Ghosts. In this play, the ghost does not actually arrive. It is not a horror play. Mr. Alving is not a character in this play, even though he is mentioned in the play. And this is one of the problems that Ibsen discusses. Now, the title of my lecture I gave this lecture is The Problem in Ibsen's Ghosts. Now, I'm not going to tell you about the problems in the composition of the text, but the problems that Henrik Ibsen dealt with. Ibsen was a naturalist playwright. He was a playwright who followed a particular tradition that brought a kind of change that was unprecedented in the European theatrical premises. He brought realistic characters on the stage who dealt with realistic problems. This particular tendency of showing life realistically was actually made popular by one of his friends, Emily Zola. Emily Zola, in his small essay Naturalism on the Stage, envisages a kind of stage on which real flesh and blood characters will walk and will discuss about real problems that we confront on a day-to-day basis. That means he wanted the kind of plays that will not show supernatural characters, that will not show unbelievable circumstances like the play Oedipus, the Rex, like what happened in most of the Shakespearean plays, but they will show common citizens like you and me, and will talk about the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis, the problems that occur to us, the problems that stay in front of us, and perhaps those problems can be discussed in form of a play. That was the idea of Henrik Ibsen. Why do we call this particular technique a naturalistic technique? Naturalism is one of the offshoots of realism. Now, what does realism mean? Realism is a tendency of literature, is a trend of literature in which literature believes that they can project the world as a mirror, in contrast to projecting the world through imagination. They believe in correspondence, in a very strict correspondence to reality. Now, can you actually show the world as it appears to you? Can you actually make a play realistic? Can you actually show real happenings on the stage? The realistic characters, the realistic playwrights at least believed in that. So what does realism mean in terms of theater? If you watch a realistic play, let's say you read a play by Gopal Chhotray, or you read a play by, let's say, by Vijay Tendulkar, then you will find that the characters that you find on the stage are identifiable characters. Are, let's say, teachers, or are you will find doctors, or the people who are living across your streets, the people that right? Those are realistic characters, as opposed to the characters that we had shown that we had seen in the Shakespearean plays. Naturalism believes that these kind of plays have the duty towards society. They are didactic in nature. They teach, they instruct. And by showing the problems of society, a playwright can act as a doctor who conducts a diagnosis of an existing social evil, an existing social problem. And all the problems that were discussed during the Victorian period in the plays of Henrik Ibsen stand alone today as problems that we need to discuss even today. The problems that he discussed in this particular play, of course, the first one was the existence of ghosts, both the individual ghost, the way a father has an impact upon the life of his son, and also the existence of the social ghost, the way our ancestors live in the form of the moral values, by writing the scriptures that we will later adhere to, by giving us the truisms, the adages that we will believe as long as we are alive, right? This play also deals with various other problems. By talking about syphilis, not using the word syphilis, This poet is talking about sexual freedom, the way Victorian society looked at sex was something that has to be done within the private doors, and it has not to be uttered, it has not to be spoken about loudly. Now, that is what Mrs. Alving did. She did not tell about the private life of her husband and represented him as a model of good conduct. See what that led to, right? Now, due to the licentious life of her husband, he contracted syphilis, and it was a reality which was to be shown on stage, as Henrik Ibsen does that by assuming the form of a doctor. In other plays of Henrik Ibsen, like Doll's House, he deals with the problem of gender discrimination. He says that there is one code of conduct for men and other code of conduct for women. Do you think that our society is very different from the society in which Henrik Ibsen wrote? Try to ask this question to you. If you were a man, if you were a boy, do you have more right to roam around on the streets than perhaps your sister, than perhaps your mother? In case our society has not yet evolved with the realization that was there in the 19th century or in the 20th century, then maybe we are still in the requirement of the diagnosis of the problems that Henrik Ibsen had done a century ago, right? In this play, he deals with another problem, the problem of euthanasia. What does euthanasia mean? Euthanasia means mercy death. Now, we know that we all have the right to our life. Does that mean that we also have the right to our death? Does that mean that, like Bhishma, we have the right of choosing the time, picking the time in which we would actually like to die? In case we cannot be a reality, does that give us the right to commit suicide? To commit suicide, by that we mean by leaving our body and perhaps existing as a ghost. Does the society, does our individual identity give us that right? Henrik Ibsen does not answer the question. He is diagnosing the problem, he's showing the problem, but is not solving the problem, because each individual who is sitting in the role of the spectator has to take the decision based on their own understanding. At the end of the play, Mrs. Alving realizes that her son Oswald Alving is leading an extremely miserable life, and he is hallucinating, his brain is weak, and he does not enjoy his life. The only source of succor that he had was his association with a maid, which turned out to be his stepsister. At that time, Mrs. Alving also realizes that in case I prolong the life of my son, then he will continue to exist through the body, but then he will become almost a zombie, a lifeless being, a body that does not have any life in it. At the end of the play, Henrik Ibsen gives a choice to Mrs. Alving. She has morphine, which she decides, which she has to decide whether to administer to her son or not. Oswald wanted his mother to put him to sleep, to put him to the final sleep, to finally give him the sweet embrace of death that he longed for by suffering throughout his life. Even the mother who gives you birth, does she have the right of ending your life? In case the mother does that without the volition of the son, then that will be called murder, which happens in our society, which happens in every society, which has happened in every time. We know the famous movie Mother India, in which the mother decided to kill the son. We also know the famous movie Vastav, in which the mother decided to kill the son because she realized that he does not have the right to life. But at a time when the son gives this right to the mother, that mother, you have given me birth and I don't enjoy this life anymore, put me to the eternal sleep. Does the mother have the right of actually putting the son out of his misery without committing homicide? Is euthanasia akin to homicide? Is euthanasia equal to homicide or not? That is also a problem that Henrik Ibsen discusses in this play, but does not provide us a solution. Now, therein lies the beauty of this play in its ambiguity. Mrs. Alving is not a person who does not realize that her decision of coming back to the house was wrong, but she decides to come back nevertheless. She's the one who sees how how predictable our actions are and how little scope we have to define ourselves as individual beings. And therefore, in Mrs. Alving, we see our own states as people who do not actually have much right, much choices during our lifetime, because most of the decisions that we will ever take in a life have been given to us, have been laid out in front of us as if on a silver platter by the people who have lived before us. And therefore, we all are haunted by ghosts and we are all acting according to the dictates of the ghosts who are living with us. Right? So, this is one more problem that he deals in this play. This play also deals with the same problem that he dealt with in A Doll's House, that is gender discrimination. We realize that Engstrand, who is supposedly the father of Regina in the beginning of the play, in the end, we realize he was not the father. Engstrand accepted the mother of Regina. And when he did that, Pastor Mender asks him, how can you accept somebody who has sinned? How can you accept somebody who has been a mother before her wedding? Like, Kunti, for example, who had a son before her wedding. Now, how can you accept that? Engstrand says that what I did was actually giving her a shelter. I wanted to give a lonely mother the shelter that a name of a father can provide, right? However, when Mrs. Alving comes back to the house of Mr. Alving, Pastor Mendes, the very person who chastised, who gave an indictment to Engstrand, says that that was your duty. So, is there no double standard between how a man should behave and how a woman should behave? If a woman has sinned, that is, in case she has had a relationship with somebody without marriage, then she is supposed to be looked down as a fallen woman, as a woman of no virtue. But in case a man engages in innumerable sexual license, still, because of the possession of wealth, because of his position in society, his reputation has to be maintained by his wife. So, is that not an instance of the hypocrisy that the Victorian society worked under? And that was also a problem that Henrik Ibsen discussed in this play. Now, what does it lead to? What does the discussion of problem lead to? Does the discussion of problem lead to the solution of the problems, or does that just make us more philosophical in nature? One question, one charge that is levied against both Henrik Ibsen and George Bernard Shaw is that even though they claimed to be realistic writers, their characters were not realistic enough. They were talking in the language that ordinary humans do not use. How can you go to the depth of perception, to the depth of understanding in which you could understand social factors with as much clarity as the characters in their plays did? Now, one thing that can be said about Ibsen is that he lived in Norway, a small but beautiful country that sits in the lap of beautiful fjords, sky touching mountains, and also the scenic beauty of the sea all around it, the oceans all around it. In that place, it was a very little population that resided during the time of his stay there, right? And at that time, when you have a lot of time in that place, perhaps that gives you the scope to find out the answer to the existential question that every human being has. To find out the answer to the question, who am I? Mukiye. And perhaps due to the abundance of time that those people had, they realize themselves better than those people who are living in crowded societies, those people who are interacting with other people on a day-to-day basis. And that is why maybe the characters in this place, when they are having long discussions about social problems, about moral dilemmas, about the meaning of life, then maybe they are realistic, looking at the society they are coming from, looking at the Norwegian time they are coming, not the Norwegian background, the Norwegian setting that they are coming from. And by discussing those plays, Ibsen does not actually give us a solution to them, but shows us that our existence is limited by the ghosts that precede us. This play also shows us a conflict between the joy of life and the joy of death. We all know that we will die one day. That is true. Should the small span that we have been given by perhaps the celestial beings should be spent in contemplating the pleasures that we will have after we die, or it should be spent in the enjoyment of the pleasures of life itself? Should we spend our life by thinking and by doing such things by which we can finally get a reservation in heaven? Or should we spend our time by doing things that we actually enjoy while living, giving absolutely no care of what will happen to us after we die? In this play, the character of Regina stands for the personification of the joy of life, and she leaves the house as Nora Helmer does in the play A Doll's House in order to experience her life in her own terms. She says a very famous dialogue of that play that a young woman must make the best of herself when she is young, because you do not know whether you will be left high and dry. And that is why, in order to realize her true potential, she has to leave the embrace, the security, the solace of Mrs. Alving's household, and also perhaps her parents, her actual father, Mr. Alving's legacy. And that is why she has to leave the house and find her personality on her own. Regina's personality stands as the epitome of an individual, or this individualistic tendency that makes us realize that our life belongs to us. And we are here, let's say now in the 21st century, surrounded by the people that are living today. And we should try to make the best of our life by interacting with them, by enjoying with them, by doing the things that we actually enjoy. We will find that most of the times we think that in case I do this today, then maybe my report card, which will be finally read after I die in heaven or hell, will not be good. And that is also a problem that Ibsen discusses in this play through the character of Mrs. Alving, who stands in stark opposition to the character of Regina. Ultimately, Mrs. Alving, who took all the right decisions throughout her life, becomes a tragic character, because by taking the right decisions, she actually led to the destruction of her own son's life. By actually taking the right decision of coming back to the house as a dutiful wife, she led to the birth of Regina and the dishonor that she would later inherit, and the incestual relationship that she risks falling into. By actually following the moral code of conduct, she did not ensure the orphanage which she wanted to establish in the loving memory of her husband. The orphanage, which was not ensured, actually burns down in fire. She was instructed by Pastor Mendes not to ensure that. Why? Because if you are ensuring, then you do not claim that God's mercy is on that place. Pastor Mendes tells her that in case you want this orphanage to grow and get the support of Christian people, then you have to keep it as an institution that is actually under the umbrage of God himself, and therefore it cannot come to any harm, right? But within the play itself, the orphanage is destroyed, the life of Oswald is destroyed, and we do not know what will happen to Regina. We know that a mother who tried her entire life trying to provide a good and beautiful life to her son failed miserably, and therein she becomes a tragic character. These are the problems that are discussed in Ibsen's Ghosts, which is one of the most famous plays, along with his other plays like A Doll's House and also Enemy of the People, which that has been adapted into a Bengali movie titled Ganasatru by Satyajit Ray. At the end of the lecture, I will give a question. Do you think that you are also haunted by ghosts, the ghosts of all the people who lived before you? Do you think that what the ghosts told you in your own life, that means your father, grandfather, their grandfathers, holds value today to you? Are you somehow operating according to the wishes of those ghosts? And in case you realize that yes, then do you think that you are living your life fully? With that, I'll end my lecture. धन्यवाद मते सुजोग देइथिबारु मो गपटी सैला फुल गछटी महिला जदि आपन पाखरे किछि प्रश्न थाए तबे आपन पचारि परंते मु चेष्टा करिवि प्रत्युत्तर उत्तर तो दे परिबेनी किंतु ता बिनिमय रे किछि कहिबा पई जदि आपन माने मते किछि कहिबा पई चाहंती तबे मु कृतज्ञ हेबि किछि नुवा सिखिबा पई पाइबे धन्यवाद
Thank you, Umesh, for the beautiful lecture on the proposed topic. So now I declare that this session now is open for the question answer. Any participants, whoever wants to ask any questions to our resource person, they can ask right now. Yes. Soumya, you ask question.
Yes, sir. Sir, I want to know why the play is named as Ghost.
Because okay, actually this is the topic he discussed. So
the Danish name of the play was Gangengir. Okay, and when this was translated into English, then the English translators gave it the term ghosts. The Danish term Gangengir actually means an entity that does not die, an entity that lives, an entity whose presence can be felt even when the entity's life is over. Okay, that means a human being, when they die, they are still there. See that ghosts only refer to human beings. We are not afraid of the ghosts of crows or cows or goats, for example. Right? I mean, people who are eating mutton and chicken, as I do often, we are not haunted by the ghosts of animals. Ghosts, by our human understanding, means the ghosts of human beings. In this play, as we discussed just now, Ibsen shows us how all the characters, all the 5 characters, who might think that they are taking choices that they are taking, that they are the masters of their own life, are actually taking choices which were already made by those people who had died before them. That means the dead had a living presence upon the people who lived the life. When it was translated into English, the only term that came close to that Danish term was ghost, and that is why this play was titled Ghosts.
Soumya, I think you are satisfied with the answer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any of the or any other participants who are interested to ask questions, they can ask.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello. Okay.
Yes,
Sir,
ma'am.
you said that according to Judeo-Christian, sir, you said, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think, madam, I think Mr. Natwar Jena is trying to ask
Yes,
something.
sir. Yes,
Hello.
sir. I want to ask a question, sir.
Ma'am, just wait for a few minutes.
Sir, am I audible?
Okay, Natwar sir, please wait for a minute. I
Okay,
ask
okay.
ma'am.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Ma'am, you can ask question right now. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, your voice was audible. Yes. Okay. Now, Natwar sir, you can ask question. Ma'am is not responding.
Sir, you have a very beautiful lecture on ghost, but you told us about 2 concepts. That is, one is individual ghost and social ghost. May I know that is individual ghost is superior to social ghost, or individual ghost is a part of social ghost, or social ghost is superior to individual ghost? Please clarify it.
Thank you, Natwar sir.
Okay.
This is not a concept that was there. This is a hypothesis that I created in order to understand this play. Okay. Now, if you see in this play, ghosts, the characters are impacted by two kind of ghosts. One, the ghost of Mr. Alvin. At the same time, they're also impacted by the moral codes of conduct. And who decided those moral codes of conduct? All the people who lived before these characters came into the planet Earth. In that way, they were impacted both by the individual ghost of Mr. Alvin and also by the compendium of values that existed before them, which we may identify as social ghost. How much a person is impacted by a kind of ghost is determined by which choices, which guidelines of the ghosts they wish to follow. Now, in case I make a hypothetical assumption that somebody dies whom we love and that person haunts us in the night, he comes to our dream, then I may say that my life is impacted by only that person's ghost. But is that true? The language that we are using, is it the language that we invented? We did not. The marriage as an institution, the rituals that we follow, right? These were all laid out much before we came to the scene. When we conduct a Shraddha or when we conduct any marriage ceremony or nuptial ceremony or equesia or any such ceremony, then we pay homage to all the people who lived before us, our ancestors. And this tradition together can be compared to a social ghost. It's not that one thing is superior or inferior. This play's intention was just to show how much is the impact of the dead upon the living ones, to take the ego out of our own mind, that we can actually decide how to lead our life. So it does not actually make a clear-cut distinction between or does not show one ghost superior to the other or inferior to the other. We just need to realize that yes, the dead have an impact that is insurmountable on the living being.
May I ask that means whether imagination has any role in identifying ghosts?
Rather, I would say that it's only imagination that leads to the concept of ghost, the way we understand ghosts, right? I mean, we do not have any documentary or empirical evidences of the existence of ghosts, because ghosts can only be seen through our, anything that we experience. I could experience your presence by looking at your face on the screen, that means through my visual organ, and by listening to your voice through my auditory organ, right? Now, how do you define a ghost which neither has voice nor has any appearance that we can see? It means that we imagine the entity which does not have a voice but can be heard, an entity that does not have an appearance but can be seen. And when we see something that does not exist, we call that imagination. In that sense, of course, the very existence of ghost is subjective. And therefore I said that no two people can see one ghost. What you see, even if we say that I saw the ghost of this particular being, what you saw may not be what I saw. So it is definitely part of imagination. When these imaginations form a part together, when let's say the imagination of person A, the imagination of person B, the imagination of person C, they collate, we call that the collective unconscious. The way we all believe that gods exist or deities exist or ghosts exist, and all of us agree that yes, they exist. That means that our collective unconscious, the imagination of all of us together, is similar to each other. Sometimes they don't agree, sometimes they agree. People of one group may agree in the existence of these supernatural beings. People of another group may agree in the existence of some other. You may totally go away and say that I don't believe in the existence of anyone. At that time, you are limiting your imagination and you are saying that I only want to believe what I can see.
Okay, thank you, sir.
When you don't go for imagination, that means you only experience the world from a scientific, reasonable, rational way, which was the tendency of the 19th century, a time when Charles Darwin came up with a theory that no, not Adam and Eve, you are the descendants of monkeys, right? So it was a time when scientific thinking was on rise and they were against imagination. You are absolutely right. The romantics in the early half of 19th century were believing in imagination, but the Norwegian playwright Ibsen did not believe in that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Miss. Thank you, Natras sir, for asking a question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I request other participants who are interested to ask questions. Now they
Sir.
can.
Sir,
Yes, Rakesh, you want to ask question? You can ask.
sir, why Henrik Ibsen's write Ghost?
Why did he write ghosts?
Okay.
In, it's a very
Yes.
it's an existential question actually. I mean, why do we think that the things that we do? But if I have to give you not an answer but a response, that then I would say that Ibsen was writing under the belief that by writing about a problem, he can at least lead to a possible solution of the problem, even though the solution is not predicted in the text in itself. When you go to a doctor and you are suffering from any kind of disease, in front of the doctor, you have to, the first thing that you do is tell them that I'm suffering these diseases. And the doctor has to predict the cause of that disease, which we call diagnosis, right? Now, Henrik Ibsen and Charles Dickens, Emile Zola, and later George Bernard Shaw, they believed themselves to be responsible for the upliftment of society. And that is why they were writing about the problems that existed in the society at that time. After writing A Doll's House, he faced severe criticism because he showed that a woman can leave the house of the husband at the dead of the night. So he wanted to write an opposite of that. So Mrs. Alving is the opposite of Nora Helmer. So now you did not allow me, or you criticized my ending in Doll's House because you thought that a woman should not leave the house of the husband. Now let me show you what happens when the woman does not leave the house of the husband. What happens? It ends in tragedy, right? That is why he wanted to convince he was actually fighting with the audience. The playwrights of the problem plays or the discursive plays or the philosophical plays were showing a different kind of villain. Now, let me just take 2 minutes in describing the idea of a villain. What is a villain? A villain is one individual whose sole motto of existence is to cause impediments in your life. When you see Mugembo Kuswa, that means you know that, okay, there is this particular person whose role is to bring all impediments that can be conceived in the life of the principal character of that movie. The plays in the realistic traditions do not show any villains because everyone has the sense of right. There is no villain in society. But if there are no villains in society, why do we suffer? We suffer because of the existence of ghosts. We suffer because of the existence of the moral codes of conduct that do not lead us, do not provide us the right to live according to our own standards. In order to show that, he conducted this play, he wrote this play. And in case you still ask who is the villain of this play, the villains were the people who were watching this play. Because all the people who watched this play would sympathize with Mrs. Alving, no, you should not leave the house, would sympathize with Pastor Mendes, that yes, you are a priest and what you did was right. And those people became the villains. So he was challenging the audience, he was challenging the society. And in order to challenge that, in order to show them that, see, all the rules, all the ethics that you are talking about are actually vain, in order to prove them that, he wrote this play.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rakesh, and thank you, Umesh, for the answer. Ma'am, I think ma'am's name, her name is written here that English teacher. She wanted to ask some question. Ma'am, will you
Hello.
please ask the question
Yes,
which you
yes,
wanted?
sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir,
Yes,
I
ma'am,
would
you're
like to
on.
know that Sir, when we are talking about Hamlet, that his mother married Claudius, his uncle, right after his father's death, then we are naming it as incestuous, right? To some extent. Then
Yeah,
in
yeah.
another, another way, if I view it, then in our Indian tradition and society, we have this concept of Devar Vivah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, complete your question.
Are you getting me, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It is audible.
Yeah. So how would you view this? That in Indian concept, Devar Viva is allowed, and we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's what I'm asking. So how would you view it then? That in Indian context we are taking it, maybe we are granting it that someone's husband is no more, and then she can get married to the younger brother of the husband.
Hmm. So, I mean, are you asking me to take a moral stand? I do not have any moral stand on this.
No. I don't want to take that. I just want to say that will it be viewed as incestuous in some way?
Okay. The idea of incest that we are talking about uh, comes from the European tradition, right? In which it is
Yeah.
realized that kinship should be between people
Yes.
who do not belong to one clan. Now, let us go to this very idea, which is an anthropological roots. Why is it done?
Yes.
Why is there a theory that a brother should not marry the sister? Why? According to an anthropological theory, perhaps different people, disparate people, people who do not belong to one clan, one family, when they mate, then they will lead to the birth of a progeny who will be stronger. In case people from one particular family marry among each other, then they might suffer, the children, the offspring of that family might suffer from some kind of diseases, suffer from some kind of problems. That is why
Yes.
most of the religions across the globe do not allow people in one particular clan to get married to each other. In that sense,
Yes.
if we are talking about the Judeo-Christian tradition, after
Yes.
Adam and Eve, every individual being is the progeny of Adam and Eve, and therefore all of them are brothers and sisters. If we believe in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Adam and Eve, Adam or Eve ke baad, everybody is like brother and sister. So this plays challenging that, right? In the Indian system also, not only that, bhanajadana, jota ki Ganjam rea one guda jagare hue, in which the moment the daughter is born, the daughter is donated to the nearest cousin brother. That practice has been followed, and not only in India, in various other pagan cultures also this concept has been followed, and therefore it will not become the stuff of a tragedy. Do we have any such play that shows that it is a tragedy? It does not. So here it is accepted, there it is not, and where it is not accepted, there it becomes the cause of tragedy. And here, because it is like widely believed to be a solution to the problems that a person can have, that okay, it is possible that a brother and a sister distantly related can get married to each other because they are not from the same mother. In case they're accepted, then what is the problem? We both have different ways of looking at the world. The Judeo-Christian way of looking at the world is different from us. We do what is right for us, what we think is right for us. They do what they think is right for them. So in case
Yes.
of Hamlet, Hamlet found that, I mean, if you remember the famous line that the wedding cake is not even stale yet, and the marriage is happening, this incestuous relationship. For Hamlet, that was a problem. Perhaps in India, that would not have been a problem had a play been written in that direction. So both these are not opposite against each other. They show us that our view is different and their view is different.
Yeah. Yes.
Ma'am, are you satisfied with the answer?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, miss. The person, I think we have another question from Sadhana Raut. Okay, Sadhana, you can ask question.
So I want to know what is the
Yes,
joy
sir.
of
Yes, sir.
life
Thank
for
you. So it wasn't
Oswald?
all.
Yes, Sadhana, what is your question?
What is the joy of life for Oswald?
Now see, life means being alive. And life is in opposition to death. When Oswald realized that he has very less time uh, on this planet Earth, at that time he found that there was one individual who is full of life, and that individual was Regina. Regina was happy with her life. A lot of us, and Oswald tells that in the context of Norway, he says that people look at life as if it is tragedy, as if it's an obligation that we have to fulfill. But when I went to Europe and when I stayed there in hostel with my college friends, when we engaged in drinking, when we engaged in merriment, when we engaged in singing, I realized that they take life as a cause of celebration. This particular view of life is against the Judeo-Christian morality of abstinence. Kosta kale Krishna mile, right? This is the Indian way of looking at abstinence, but then the Judeo-Christian way of looking at abstinence is that if you suffer in your life, in case you are penitent, in case you are contrite, then you have a higher chance of going to heaven. That is why who is the Christian God? He who suffered the most, he who did the righteous things and was finally made. The idea that you can enjoy life is against morality. And how do you enjoy life? By drinking, by making merry, by doing all sorts of things that they will ask you not to enjoy. In the personality of Regina, he found that European spirit of life. He found that Regina can enjoy life because she's enjoying the things that she is doing, right? She enjoys the fact that she's a maid in that house. She enjoys her walk. See, when he comes back, Oswald comes back from Europe, asks him, when are you taking me to Europe? I want to go to France. I want to enjoy that country, and that is why I'm learning France. In the curiosity of learning new things, in the in the belief that life has much more than the suffering that we are inheriting, she became an epitome of the joy of life. The joy of life was also later appropriated by George Bernard Shaw in his famous play Man and Superman. He shows us the character who actually go to hell, the philosophical hell of George Bernard Shaw, fighting for living life as it is and enjoying each and every facet of life without being ashamed, right? Enjoying the food, enjoying all the sensory pleasures that we can enjoy through our five senses. Now, Regina showed Oswald that yes, life has more than suffering, and that is why she became a personification of the joy of life, which the ghosts, according to this play, do not allow you to enjoy. The ghosts want you to lead a life in such a way that, okay, this is just a test. Life is just a problem that you have to solve. Life is just a sentence that you have to pass, like a jail term. And after this life is, passed, eternal bliss awaits you after your death. That bliss or Amrit stays for you, which you can experience only after your death. But the realization that you will die will make you perhaps experience the tiny pleasures of your life, the little pleasures of your life in a more rejuvenated manner. And that's what is the thrust of this play, that enjoy life as it is. Gather the rosebuds as ye may, carpe diem, that enjoy today. So none of the characters in this play could actually enjoy it today. So that was the motto of this play, to make them realize that life is beautiful. Do what you think is appropriate, not what your ancestors have told you. Take the actions according to your own conscience, not on the basis of what others have told you. So if you are leading your life according to what you think right, then maybe you are more likely to enjoy the joy of life than perhaps thinking about what our ancestors might have expected of us to do.
Thank you, Umesh. Thank you, Sadhana. I think Sabitri, one of our students, she wants to ask some
I want to
questions.
ask. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
You ask?
Regina is the daughter of Mr. Alvin, but she lives the life of Maid. Why should not he protest against that after knowing that she is the daughter of Mr. Alvin?
She protested. She asked this question to Mrs. Alving that if you knew I was in fact his daughter, then why did you not raise me as a lady?
Yes.
Why did you treat me as if I was a housemaid? Even though as a housemaid, Oswald would say that, yeah, you have the joy of life. But she asked this question to Mrs. Alving. Mrs. Alving does not have an answer. Now you see, by doing the right thing, Mrs. Alving actually darkened Regina's life. By doing the right thing, she withheld this truth from Regina, and Regina does protest. Her act of leaving the Alving household in order to go and stay in an inn, and in that her not father but young friend decides to establish, which will be a home for the wandering seamen with the name of Mr. Alving's home for the wandering seamen. She goes to live there. Now in that way she will perhaps have a chance of living the legacy of her father, so she does protest within the play itself.
Sir,
Yes.
another question. So, do you think that she suffer because she is a woman?
That appears so, does it not? In the play you see that there were two progeny of Mr. Alvin. One is Mr. Oswald and one is Regina.
Yes.
Oswald gets training in painting in Europe, in the same household in which Mr. Alvin lived. Now, see, Mrs. Alvin does not belong to that household. In the patriarchal setup, she comes to the house, which she had actually left just a year after her marriage. So Regina has as much right to the house as Oswald, rather you may say more right than Mrs. Alving herself. Because she was a woman, she definitely was not allowed her right, but at the same time, the fact that her mother was also a maid also made it difficult for her to survive, because had it been a man it would have been different. Because it was woman, it is different. So of course she suffers as a woman. And at the end of the play, when she goes to the house of Mrs. Alving's wandering home of wandering seamen, you do not know what kind of house that is. Is that an inn? Is that a place where the seamen will come and there they will enjoy the bacchanalian enjoyment of life and do all sorts of things that we see in Oliver Goldsmith's play She Stooped to Conquer? The way people come to these inns, the way they look at the barmaids as objects of sexual desire. Will that become her life? We don't know. So even after the play she might suffer, but Oswald also suffers. You see that even though Henrik Ibsen talks about equality of women, he was not a feminist playwright. He said that my plays are about how an individual should realize one's life. In this play we find everybody suffering. Regina, Oswald, Mrs. Alving, no one survived. So in that way, yes, it showed human suffering in general, irrespective of gender, but it also highlighted that there are different codes for men, different codes for women. Mr. Alving can have as many licenses as possible, but the mother of Regina is a fallen woman because she had a license. So yeah, gender discrimination is shown in this play, but we all are living in a kind of web in which we are both privileged and punished for the position that we attain. Our heteronormative identity as an individual, as a male, as a female, as perhaps a Hindu or a Muslim, a Christian, English speaking people, Odia speaking people, all of these things become part of our personality. We are both privileged and punished for the specific identity that we obtain. In this play, everybody suffers, Regina also.
So it can be said that Regina is illegal daughter of Mr. Alving, so she suffer.
When we say illegal, of course, I mean, in this play, we would regard that is what Mrs. Alving thought. But then what does law mean? Now see, nature and law are contradictory to each other. Law is invented by human beings. Nature does not care about law. When a human being mates with another human being, a child comes into the society, right? Child is born.
Yes.
In that sense, how is one thing legal and the other thing not? This is regarded illegal by Pastor Manders. Now, he is the one who was the upholder of morality, the darling of Mrs. Alving, somebody that she thought is actually a virtuous man. Now, that was a person who said that how could she be born without a proper wedlock between her mother and the person that actually was the father of Regina. But law and nature, they are two different things. This play was a naturalistic play in which it was questioning human laws. Law that questions a life can make something legal and make something illegal, but cannot make it unnatural. And that is why our idea that this was illegal is predicted by the ghost's dictates that yes, you should conduct marriage before this and that, right? And that belief which is given to Mrs. Alving by Pastor Menders leads her to live this life. But till the end of the play, she did not know that. She realized that she is actually the daughter of Engstrand. She becomes illegal maybe later when she realizes that, oh, that was not actually my father. So yeah, our concept of law is determined by what others have told us.
Okay, thank you, Miss. Thank you, Sabitri. Actually, our other student, Soumya, she wants to ask question. But before that, I want to ask any other participant, whoever wants to ask question, they can say right now. They can ask. Okay, Soumya, you have another question you can ask.
Sir, I want to know, is it necessary to write about the writer in our question?
In our
Yes.
question, I mean, what question?
Sir, exam re jo question kichhi भी
Okay, we'll discuss it in classroom. Okay, don't worry. Soumya, we'll discuss it in our classroom. Okay, it's not right now. Okay. So anyone else, any other person or any other participants, whoever wants to ask question, they can ask. Now the session is open for the question. Yes, ETC, do you want to ask some question? You know, or nobody? Okay, Sadhana, do you want to ask any question?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, okay, ask now.
Why Mrs. Alving? Hello, sir.
Yes, you are audible.
Why Mrs. Alving? Why Mrs. Alving lied to everyone about Johanna and Captain Alving's illegal relationship? What is the effect?
Why do you think that she did so? Had Mrs. Alving revealed this, what would have been the state of Regina? She would have become a bastard, right? A bastard means a person who is born out of wedlock. The bastard is not accepted either in the West or in the East. The way Karna was not accepted in Mahabharata, in the same way, the identity of Regina as a bastard of Mr. Alving would also have perhaps given her a bad reputation, and that would have caused more problems in her life than the identity as the daughter of a drunk and immoral Engstrand, at least who got married to the person who made her pregnant. In order to make Regina at least socially acceptable by giving her the patronage of a father, even though not a very reputable one, Mrs. Alving did not tell her the truth.
Yes. Thank you, Sadhana. Thank you, Miss. Any other participants wants to ask question? faculties from our college department, if they are interested to ask questions, they can now. No one else? Okay. So, but I have a question that Umesh, actually, whatever we know that Henry Gibson, basically he writes problem play. Okay. And he discussed with many, various problems in society in his plays, like, Doll's House, this one, Pillars of Society. And here also discussed a little bit, I think. But what do you think that? Can we say it is a typical problem play of Henry Gibson?
See, problem play, Henry Gibson did not write problem play per se, the way Shakespeare did not write Shakespearean play, right?
Yes.
Problem play is a term that became popular later, and we say that Henry Gibson was a progenitor of that form. We find that, yes, in his plays, he discussed the problems existing in then society. Right. When he wrote that, when any writer writes, then a writer brings into being an entity that did not exist before his or her active contribution in creating that thing possible. What Ibsen wrote was, of course, what we find. We could discuss it with our later perceptions. For example, tomorrow with Freudian analysis, we can look at this plays, as has happened with many of his plays, especially Rosmer's poem, right, in which he talks about images. That play is actually about ghosts, more than this play, right? Ghosts. So he wrote about what he saw in society, and he actually saw the problems in society. And because in all of his plays he discussed problems, that's why we say that, yes, this is an example of problem play. How is this different from the other plays? You see that the plays of, let's say, Oscar Wilde are not problem plays in very strict sense of the term. You can still look at problems in them. You find that the plays of, let's say, the sentimental comedy in the 18th century are not problem plays. So the Restoration Comedy of Man, they're not problem plays, in which there were characters who were heroes, there were characters who were villains. Where there are heroes and villains, you can attribute all the reason to the suffering of the hero to the villain. In problem play, there are no heroes, there are no villains. Every individual has a set of limitations, and they decide to lead the life based on the circumstances that they are in. In case they do so, where does the problem arise? And Henry Gibson, in all of his plays, scrutinized each problem. In one play, he would deal with the problem of tradition, like in this play. In other play, Enemy of the People, he would discuss the problem of society. I mean, okay, you want to bring a positive change. What if society does not accept? A very good person wants to actually save his people from getting polluted, contaminated, and contracting disease. What happens to that person? So he took one problem in this play, one problem in that play, and that is why we can later, looking at this play, apply this lens of problem plays on his entire waiver, but not on all of his plays, on some of his plays, especially the sociological plays, like Rosmer's Poem, this play, Pillars of Society, which is a little more philosophical than the other plays, Doll's House, and Enemy of the People. Yes, we can call them problem play, but looking at them from our contemporary way of understanding those plays. We must understand that these terms are heuristic tools. These terms are tools that make us understand something better. Wordsworth was not a romantic writer. We call him romantic because it makes us understand the writing that got published in that time better. So in that way, we understand this. You are absolutely right. We can call it a problem play, even though he would not directly call himself a problem play when he was alive.
Okay, thank you, Miss. So I want to, for the last time, I invite all the participants, whoever wants to, any questions regarding this talk, this presentation, he or she may ask question right now, or they can write in chat box. I will ask directly to our resource person. We'll just wait for 1 minute. If nobody responds, then we'll proceed further. I think most of our participants, they understood everything, and there's not any doubt. And from on behalf of Department of English, Pattamundai College, I am sorry for the inconvenience which occurred during our talk. There's a little bit disturbances, so that's why I deeply regret for that. In further, it won't happen. But thank you, Miss, for a very beautiful, nice presentation. Now, I would like to request our head of the Department of English, Pattamundai College, Dr. Sachin Das sir, to propose a vote of thanks. Yeah. Just a minute. You unmute your. Here comes our Honorable Head of the Department. I request him to propose a vote of thanks.
So I am very happy as I have been given the opportunity to say you a vote of thanks to all of you. At first, I want to extend my vote of thanks to our Honorable Principal, Adhikari Lakshmi Narayan Das, who has given us encouragement and inspired us to arrange such webinars. Then I would like to thank our resource person, Dr. Umesh Patra, Assistant Professor, PG Department of English, Language and Literature, Mahatma Gandhi, Central University, Bihar. Sir, we are very much obliged to you, grateful to you, thankful to you, because you have taken so much strain and pain, and with great patience, you have answered all our questions of our students, of our faculty members. Sir, we are very happy. We are very happy to get such a resource person. Thank you very much. I thank from the core of my heart, sir. Then I would like to thank our convener, Dr. Manas Kumar Naik, who has arranged all these things. So I am very much thankful to him again. Then I am very much thankful to our faculty members, Professor Amyo Kumar Das and Professor Saroj Kanta Naik. Again, I am very much thankful to all our participants, to all our faculty members, to our staff members, and to our students. Basically, our third year students, they have asked many questions. So, last but not the least, I again thank our technical persons who arranged all these things to make this webinar a great success. Again, I pray God, I wish for a stay home. I wish that slogan, that is stay home, stay in peace, stay in happiness. With this, I conclude my thank you, Lord.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Miss. I also thank all the faculties and other the faculties from various colleges or universities who are present here, who get patient and listen to our resource person. I'm really thankful to everyone. And now this seminar is over. I expect Umesh later on will be inviting you for such academic work. We expect your help and cooperation. Thank you. Herewith, with the permission of our Honorable Principal Sir, I declare this webinar is over. Thank you. Thank you all.